The American sergeant just collapsed before they even heard the shot, just like that. One moment he was standing there, puffing on his lucky strike, chuckling at some dumb joke. The next, he was sprawled out on the frozen ground, his blood staining the snow crimson. Nobody saw a thing. Nobody knew where the shot came from. And that was just day one, December 1944. The Battle of the Bulge had just begun. The German army was launching its last, desperate offensive against the Allied forces, but while tanks rumbled and infantry advanced, one man, a lone wolf, was working on his own mission. His name was Master Corporal Klaus Zimmermann, 26 years old, born in the Alps, like the best German snipers always seemed to be. He'd spent 2 years on the Eastern Front, where he was trained by Matthias Hetzenauer, the deadliest German sniper of them all, with 345 confirmed kills. Klaus had 89 confirmed kills himself, all on the Eastern Front. But now, he was in the West. And here, he would become a legend, one the Allies would never forget. Klaus had been lying in the same position for 4 hours. The snow had piled up on his back, a white blanket that blended him seamlessly into the landscape. His fingers were numb with cold, but he flexed them slightly, keeping the blood circulating. Movement was life. Stillness was death. His modified camouflage was a masterpiece of improvisation, an umbrella frame, stripped of its fabric, interwoven with pine needles, snow, and small branches. From above, he was part of the forest. From the side, a natural shadow. Hetzenauer had shown him the system on the Eastern Front, but Klaus had perfected it. Each needle was deliberately placed, each branch strategically positioned. The camouflage wasn't rigid. It moved slightly in the wind. Like real vegetation, that was the key. Perfection was suspicious. Naturalness was invisible. He breathed slowly, controlled, inhaling through his nose, the cold air filling his lungs. Hold for 4 seconds, his heartbeat slowing, exhaling through his mouth and slowly, so no vapor formed. Hetzenauer had taught him that. Breath was movement. Movement was betrayal. Through his 6x scope of his Mauser Kar 98K, he watched the American line, 600 meters away, too far for most. Perfect for him. The sergeant made a mistake. He stood up, lit a cigarette, the small light of the flame, a beacon in the twilight. Klaus waited. The man inhaled deeply, laughed at something, stood still. 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. The trigger squeezed back, smoothly. Crack! Through the scope. Klaus watched the man fall. Perfect chest shot. Death within seconds. Then, he did what Hetzenauer had taught him. He remained absolutely still, didn't move a muscle. Waited. The Americans were yelling, searching, firing wildly in every direction. Klaus counted slowly to 300, 5 minutes. Then he crawled backwards, inch by inch, until he was behind the crest of the hill. He would never fire from the same position twice. Never. 3 days later, 7 American soldiers dead, all head or chest shots, all from different angles, all from impossible distances. The American commanders were baffled. Was it a single sniper or a team? How could he be everywhere at once? Major Patterson of the 101st Airborne stared at the map. Red X's marked the positions of the dead. They formed a semicircle around the German sector. "This is impossible," he muttered. "These shots came from positions miles apart, in just 3 days." His executive officer, Lieutenant Morrison, nodded nervously. "Sir, the men are already calling him the Ghost. They're afraid to leave their positions." Patterson slammed his fist on the table. "We can't let ourselves be terrorized by one damn sniper. Double the guards. No one moves in daylight without cover." But Klaus was already observing the new patterns and adapting. A week after the first shot, the Americans sent in their own snipers. Corporal James Fletcher was the best shot in the 1st Infantry Division, 34 confirmed kills in North Africa and Italy. He came with a team of 3 men, a spotter, a guard, and a radio man. "We're going to find this Nazi bastard," Fletcher told his team, "and then he's history." They positioned themselves in a church tower, with a perfect view over no man's land. From here, they could observe every angle of the German line. Fletcher felt confident, superior. That was his first mistake. Klaus had already identified the church tower 3 days earlier. He knew they would come, knew they would be right there. He was lying 800 meters away, in a position that Fletcher would never have considered. Too far, too difficult, impossible in this wind. Through his scope, Klaus watched Fletcher position himself at the window, saw the glint of his scope in the morning sun. Another mistake. Klaus calculated quickly. Wind, 15-kilometer wedge from the northwest. Bullet drop at 800 meters, 4.2 meters. Humidity high, temperature -8 degrees. He adjusted his sights, aiming not at Fletcher, but at a point 30 centimeters to the left, and 40 centimeters higher. Breathed out, waited for the pause between 2 heartbeats, squeezed the trigger. The bullet traveled through the icy air for 2.3 seconds. The wind carried it slightly to the right. Gravity pulled it down, but Klaus had calculated everything. Fletcher was looking through his scope when the bullet hit his left eye. He was dead instantly. His spotter screamed. The radioman desperately called for backup. The guard fired wildly in the wrong direction. Klaus lay perfectly still, counted to 300, then crawled slowly back, position abandoned. Never fire from the same place twice. 2 weeks, 21 dead Americans, including 4 snipers, 2 officers, and a radio man. The psychological impact was devastating. American soldiers refused to leave their trenches. Guards ducked at every sound. Officers had to force their men to take their posts at gunpoint. An entire regiment, more than 3,000 men, was paralyzed by a single sniper. Colonel William Harris, commander of the regiment, wrote in a confidential report, "Morale is at an all-time low. The men are calling him the invisible death. They believe he can be anywhere, that he can see through walls. I need reinforcements or psychological support, urgently." But Klaus wasn't a ghost. He was a man, a highly trained individual, with a mission, and he'd only just begun, 3 weeks in the field. Klaus had only one rule: survival. His technique was impeccable. Every evening he'd leave his position in the German sector, crawl through no man's land, seek a new position, sometimes only 200 meters from the American lines. His modified umbrella frame was genius. The metal struts held the shape, but the fabric was removed. Instead, he wove vegetation through the struts, pine needles, frozen grass, small branches. It blended perfectly into any environment. Before sunrise, he was already in position, dug himself in, covered himself with snow, becoming one with the landscape. Then he waited for hours, sometimes all day. Hetzenauer had said, "A good sniper shoots, a great sniper waits." Klaus always waited. He ate cold rations, drank melted snow, urinated into a bottle, moving only when absolutely necessary. His Mauser Kar-98K was meticulously maintained. Every night he cleaned it, oiled the mechanism, checked the sights. He kept the ammunition in a pocket close to his body, so it would be body temperature. Cold ammunition flew differently than warm. Details, everything was details, and details kept him alive. 4 weeks. The American leadership was desperate. They brought in specialists, sniper experts from England, tactical advisors, even a psychologist who tried to predict the German sniper's behavior. Nothing worked. Major General Anthony McAuliffe, famous for his defense of Bastogne, personally took over coordination. "This one man," he said at a strategy meeting, "is paralyzing an entire division. That's unacceptable. I want him dead, no matter the cost." They developed a plan, a diversion. They would send a fake supply convoy, manned with mannequins. Around it, they would position 10 of their best snipers. If the German shot, they would see his muzzle flash and return fire. It was a good plan. But Klaus was better. He had noticed the increased activity, the unusual movements, the snipers positioning themselves too carefully. It was a trap. So Klaus set his own trap. He didn't shoot at the fake convoy. Instead, he waited, observed, identified every single American sniper by tiny details, a scope reflecting the light, a movement that was just a little too quick, a shadow that didn't look natural. 10 positions, all identified. Then he began to work. The first shot came from 900 meters. An American sniper fell before he even realized what was happening. Panic erupted. The other snipers desperately searched for the muzzle flash, but Klaus had already changed position. 400 meters to the west, a new position that he had prepared 2 days ago. Second shot. Another American fell. The remaining 8 snipers opened fire. Hundreds of rounds flew, but they were shooting at shadows. At positions that Klaus had left minutes ago. Third shot, fourth, fifth. In 20 minutes, Klaus had killed 5 American snipers. The other 5 fled. General McAuliffe received the report in his headquarters. He crumpled the paper and threw it against the wall. "Damn it," he whispered. "Who is this man?" 5 weeks without proper rest. Klaus felt it in every muscle. His hands trembled slightly when he wasn't focused. His eyes were bloodshot. He had lost 18 pounds, but he couldn't stop. Not yet. On the night of the 35th day, he sat in a destroyed farmhouse 2 miles behind German lines. His captain, Friedrich Weber, found him there. "Klaus," Weber said quietly, "you need to rest. You look half dead." Klaus shook his head. "The Americans are planning something. I can feel it. If I rest now, they'll advance." Weber sat down next to him. "You've done more in 5 weeks than an entire battalion. You've paralyzed them, but you're only human." "Hetzenauer once told me," Klaus spoke slowly, "that a sniper fights 2 wars, one against the enemy and one against himself. The second one is harder." Weber nodded. "How long are you going to keep this up?" Klaus methodically loaded his magazine, 5 rounds, each one checked by hand. "Until they stop coming," he said finally. "Or until I can't anymore." "And if they catch you?" Klaus looked at him. His eyes were cold, tired, but resolved. "Then they'll have earned it." 6 weeks. 47 dead Americans. Then came Sergeant John Chapman. Chapman was different than the others. Not a fresh sniper. Not a young man trying to prove himself. He was 41 years old, had fought in World War I, then been a hunter in Montana. For 10 years, he had tracked elk and bear. He knew patience, knew the wilderness. Knew war. The army pulled him out of retirement, gave him a mission, find the German sniper, eliminate him. Chapman accepted, but he had his own rules. "I work alone," he told General McAuliffe. "No team, no support. Give me 3 weeks. Either he's dead or I am." McAuliffe agreed. Chapman studied every death, every position, every detail. He saw patterns that others had missed. The German sniper never shot in winds over 12 mph, never in rain. Never after 4 p.m. He preferred distances between 650 and 1,000 yards. He only ever shot once per position. But the most important pattern, he always moved counterclockwise. Never in a straight line, always in a wide arc around the American positions. Chapman took a map, marked all the deaths, drew lines between them, saw the arc, the rhythm, the pattern. Then he calculated where the German would be next. 7 weeks. Klaus had perfected his rhythm. He was a machine, precise, deadly, unstoppable. But machines have patterns, and patterns can be predicted. Chapman had been lying in his position for 18 hours. He hadn't moved, hadn't eaten, had barely breathed. He was 200 yards from the position where he expected the German sniper, an extreme distance, almost impossible for an accurate shot. But Chapman was no ordinary sniper. He'd spent his entire life shooting at extreme distances. Elk in Montana. 800, 900, sometimes even 1,000 meters. He knew wind, knew ballistics, knew patience. The sun was rising slowly. 5:47 a.m., exactly the time the German usually took his shots. Chapman waited. His finger rested lightly on the trigger of his Springfield M1903. His breathing was shallow, his heart rate slow. Then he saw it. A tiny movement, 100 meters away. So subtle anyone else would have missed it. But Chapman wasn't just anyone else. He adjusted his sights. Calculated wind 12 kilometers per hour from the east, temperature -6 degrees Celsius, humidity 78%, drop at 100 meters, 6.8 meters. He aimed not at the position itself, but at a point 2 meters above and 1 meter to the left, exhaled, waited, and squeezed the trigger. Klaus felt the impact before he heard the shot. The bullet struck his left shoulder. Not fatal, but painful. Very painful. He immediately rolled to the side, ignored the pain. Scrambled 3 meters to the right. A second bullet slammed into the spot where he'd just been. Someone had found him. Someone good. Klaus pressed his hand against the wound. Blood seeped between his fingers. He could barely move his left arm. His Mauser Kar-98K was too heavy to shoot accurately with one hand. He was hit, but not defeated. With clenched teeth, he crawled backward, inch by inch. The pain was intense, but he'd experienced worse. On the Eastern Front, he'd fought for 3 days with shrapnel in his leg. He reached a small trench, rolled into it, pressed snow against the wound to stop the bleeding. Then he lay still, listened, waited. No further shots. The American sniper didn't know if he'd hit his target, was waiting for Klaus to move, but Klaus wouldn't move. Not now. He would wait until dark. Then he'd crawl back to the German lines, get treated, and come back. Because this wasn't over. A week later, Klaus's shoulder was bandaged but not healed. Every movement was agony. The doctor had said he needed at least 4 weeks of rest. Klaus gave him 3 days. Captain Weber found him cleaning his Mauser Kar-98K. "You can't be serious," Weber said incredulously. Klaus loaded the magazine. His movements were slow, but deliberate. "The American is good," Klaus said. "Very good. He found me where no one else could. He shot and hit me from 100 meters. I respect that. So you're staying here?" "No." Klaus stood up, his face contorted in pain. "So I'm going back and ending it." Weber shook his head. "You're insane. He'll kill you." Klaus looked at him with tired but determined eyes. "Maybe, but if I stay here, if I give up, then he's already won, and I didn't survive 8 weeks to give up now." He picked up his Mauser Kar-98K, checked the sights, loaded 5 rounds into the magazine. "Matthias Hetzenauer once told me, a sniper only dies when he gives up fighting, as long as he breathes, as long as he can think, as long as he can pull a trigger. He's dangerous." Klaus walked to the door, turned back one last time. If I'm not back in 3 days, tell my mother I died like a soldier. Weber nodded slowly. Good luck, Klaus. Luck, Klaus smiled weakly, has nothing to do with it. Klaus Zimmermann disappeared into the darkness. His shoulder throbbed. His body was weak, but his spirit was stronger than ever. Somewhere out there, Chapman was waiting. The best American sniper, the only man who had ever hit Klaus. 2 masters of their craft, 1 battlefield, only one would survive. The next 4 weeks would show who was the better man. 9 weeks since the first shot. Klaus was back. His shoulder was stiff. He couldn't lift it completely. But he had learned to live with the pain, had adjusted his technique, now used an improvised support for the Mauser Car 98K to relieve the strain on his left arm. Chapman knew the German was back. He had heard the reports. An American soldier, dead. Perfect headshot from 700 meters. The signature was unmistakable. The wounded sniper had returned. And that only made him more dangerous, because now he had nothing left to lose. The 2 men began a deadly game, each trying to lure the other into a trap, each waiting for the one mistake that would end it all. 10 weeks. Klaus had changed his tactics. He no longer shot every day. Sometimes he waited 2-3 days. Then he struck twice in 1 day, in different locations. Chapman tried to read the patterns, but there were no patterns anymore. Klaus had become unpredictable. This frustrated Chapman. He was used to understanding his prey, to anticipating their moves. But this German was different, suffering from a gunshot wound, yet more lethal than before. One night, Chapman wrote in his diary, "I'm hunting a man who should already be dead. He's wounded, malnourished, exhausted, but he keeps fighting. I don't understand why. What drives a man that far?" He would never know, because Klaus didn't keep diaries. He only lived for the next shot. 11 weeks. Chapman had a new strategy. He used himself as bait. He positioned himself in an exposed location, intentionally let his scope reflect in the sun. A clear mistake, an obvious target. But 400 meters behind him, well hidden, lay his partner, a young sniper named Davis. If the German shot at Chapman, Davis would see the muzzle flash and return fire. It was a clever plan, but not clever enough. Klaus saw the trap immediately. The exposed sniper, the too obvious reflection, the unnatural positioning. Chapman wanted Klaus to shoot at him, so Klaus didn't shoot at Chapman. He searched for the second man, the hidden shooter, and after 2 hours of patient observation, he found him. Davis made a tiny mistake. He moved his head 2 centimeters too far to the left. For half a second, his profile was visible. That was enough. Klaus squeezed the trigger. 650 meters. Crosswind 18 kilometers per hour. Upward angle 15 degrees. Davis died without knowing what hit him. Chapman heard the shot behind him, turned around, saw his partner lying lifeless on the ground. For the first time in his life, Chapman felt real fear, not before death, but before this enemy. Who was this man? 12 weeks in, Klaus was at the end of his strength. He only weighed 135 pounds now. His ribs were visible. His eyes were deep in their sockets. His hands trembled, except when he was aiming. His shoulder was inflamed. The medic had said, without proper treatment, he'd lose the arm. Klaus ignored it. He only slept 2, maybe 3 hours a night. He had constant nightmares, waking up in a cold sweat with the Mauser Car 98K in his hands. Captain Weber visited him one last time. "Klaus, and please, you're dying. If not from a bullet, then from exhaustion. Come back." Klaus looked at him. His eyes were hollow, but his gaze was sharp. "I can't stop. Don't you understand? If I stop now..." It was all for nothing. all the pain, all the sacrifices, everything. But you will die. Klaus smiled weakly. We all die, Captain. The question is, what for? He loaded his Mauser Kar 98K, 5 rounds. As always, I'll die so they remember me. So every American soldier who was here tells their grandchildren there was a German sniper, a single man, and he put the fear of God in all of us. Weber nodded slowly. He understood, not approving. But he understood. Then die with honor, Klaus. That's the plan. 13 weeks in, Chapman had had enough. He took an extreme risk. Disguised himself as a regular soldier, no camouflage, no sniper rifle, just a normal uniform and an M1 Garand. He walked through no man's land, in the middle of the day, on foot, slowly, as if he were on patrol. But in his inside pocket, he carried a .45 Colt pistol, and he had a plan. Klaus watched him through his scope. Something wasn't right. The way the man walked, the way he moved, too controlled, too deliberate. This was a trap. It had to be. But Klaus was tired. So tired. And this soldier was a clear target. 400 meters. Easy shot. His finger rested on the trigger. He exhaled, aimed. Then he saw it. A shadow. 600 meters to the right of the patrolling soldier. So subtle he almost missed it. It was Chapman, the real Chapman, hidden, waiting. The patrolling soldier was a dummy, a puppet, controlled by wires. Klaus took his finger off the trigger, smiled, despite the pain. Clever, he whispered, very clever. Then he swung his scope toward the position where he'd seen the shadow. Waited, watched, and after 20 minutes, he saw him. Chapman. Just for a second, a tiny moment as he adjusted his position. Klaus aimed, calculated, exhaled, squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew through the air. 600 meters. It missed Chapman by 1.5 inches, grazed his right cheek, leaving a burning furrow. Chapman yelled out, grabbed his face. Blood flowed between his fingers. He was hit, not fatally, but hit. 2 masters, both wounded, both on the verge of exhaustion, but neither would give up. 14 weeks in, the Battle of the Bulge had failed. The German army was retreating. The war was lost. But Klaus and Chapman continued to fight. In their own world, their own war, Klaus received orders to retreat. The German army was evacuating their positions. Soon the Americans would advance. He ignored the order. Chapman also received new orders. His division was to break through the German lines. He was to go with them. He ignored the orders. Both men knew this would end soon. One of them would die, or both. But it had to end. 15 weeks in, the last day, the sky was grey. Heavy with unfallen snow, the temperature was 14 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind was blowing at 5 miles per hour from the northeast. Klaus registered every detail automatically. After 105 days, such calculations had become instinct. Klaus lay in his position, a shallow trench behind a fallen tree. His shoulder was black with infection, swollen and hot. Every movement sent waves of pain through his body. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His body was at its end. An emaciated skeleton functioning only by willpower, but his mind was clear, crystal clear. The fever that ravaged his body paradoxically sharpened his senses. Colors were more intense, sounds more distinct. Time slowed down. Through his 6X scope, he saw Chapman, only 500 meters away, positioned on a small hill behind 3 fallen logs. Chapman also looked exhausted. His uniform was dirty, his face gaunt. The wound on his right cheek had healed, but left a jagged scar, a reminder of Klaus's shot 2 weeks ago. Both men looked at each other through their scopes, recognized each other, not with eyes, those were too far away, but with instinct, with the sixth sense that only hunters develop, the knowledge of being watched, the feeling of being in the crosshairs. Klaus aligned his crosshairs on Chapman's position. Chapman did the same. Two snipers, both perfectly positioned, both perfectly aimed. Both ready to fire? Who would squeeze first? Klaus' finger was on the trigger. A gram of pressure, just a gram. Then Chapman would die. But then he heard something, a noise behind him. German voices, his Captain Weber, with a squad of soldiers. "Klaus!" Weber shouted. "The Americans are coming! We have to go now!" Klaus turned his head, just for a second, a tiny second. That was his mistake. Chapman saw the movement, saw the distraction, aimed, exhaled. Squeezed the trigger. The bullet hit Klaus in the chest, to the right of his heart, a fatal shot, but not immediately. He fell onto his back, stared at the grey sky. Blood filled his mouth. Weber reached him first, knelt down. "Klaus, hold on!" Klaus smiled weakly. Blood ran over his chin. "Did I fight well?" Weber had tears in his eyes. "You paralyzed an entire division for 4 months. You were the best sniper I've ever seen." Klaus nodded slowly. His breathing became shallow. Good, then it wasn't, for nothing. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small notebook, gave it to Weber. "Give this to my mother. Tell her I did my duty. I will." Klaus closed his eyes. Hetzenauer was right. A sniper only dies when he gives up fighting. His breath stopped. Klaus Zimmermann, 26 years old, Master Corporal, the ghost of the Ardennes, was dead. Chapman looked through his scope. He saw the German soldiers gathered around the dead body. He saw them carry him with honor. He lowered his rifle, laid it aside, just sat there. His partner, Lieutenant Miller, found him later. "Sir, we have reports that the German sniper has been eliminated. Was that you?" Chapman nodded slowly. "Yeah, that was me. How are you feeling?" Chapman thought for a long time. "Empty," he said finally. "I feel empty." He stood up, picked up his rifle, went back to the American lines. He would never work as a sniper again. After the war, he returned to Montana, hunted elk again, never spoke about the war. But every night, he dreamed of a German sniper, a man he had never met in person, but whom he knew better than most people. A worthy opponent. Klaus Zimmermann terrorized the entire Allied line for 4 months during the Battle of the Bulge. He had 73 confirmed kills in that time, including 11 snipers, 8 officers, and dozens of soldiers. His tactics were later documented in sniper manuals. His modified camouflage system with the umbrella frame is still taught today. Chapman survived the war, received 2 medals for bravery, never spoke about it. Weber's unit found detailed records in Klaus's notebook, every shot, every position, every calculation. It became one of the most important documents for modern sniper tactics. On Klaus's grave in the Alps it reads, "He fought with honor. He died with honor. He will never be forgotten." And he was never forgotten. American veterans of the Battle of the Bulge told their grandchildren about him, about the ghost, about the single man who put an army in fear, about Klaus Zimmermann, the sniper who terrorized the entire Allied line for 4 months.